All right, so that video 2, we've already started with this whole notion of energy, okay? And I know that there's a couple of topics we need to weave into that. Like there's things like inertia, there's things like what gets in the way. So I think let's just pop into this video 2 now and see what we come up with. And I also, there's the what I call TEMS, you had a T, so
yeah.
Let's sort of bring that out. I'm not sure what order, but why don't we start with something around inertia? Well, no.
Let's go back to the word movement.
Yeah, okay.
Right? If anything's going to move, it makes sense that it has to have some energy to move. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so it's the energy of movement is what video number 2 is going to be about.
Right.
Okay.
There's going to be no movement without some form of energy.
Right.
The question is where that energy is coming from. Is there enough energy for movement or not? And if there is energy for movement, can it be harnessed or not? If we're looking at natural systems, if we've got a river, there's energy there to create power. But if it's impossible to harness that river, then there's no sense of making any kind of movement around harnessing it, because it's just too hard to, it's not economical to harness it. So some nuclear energy in the form of atomic bomb is not very constructive unless you want to kill a lot of people. But nuclear energy in a nuclear plant harnessed can do a lot of work, less inertia.
So harnessing is an important word here?
Harnessing is an important word. And what is it that overcomes the inertia? So there's so many topics around what's the energy of a movement. If someone is creating a movement, where's the pressure coming from? There's also the aspect of internal versus internal pressure to make the movement, and external, or both. And then there's the pressure to make a movement coming from a craving inside, or a lot of pain to overcome the inertia, or there's a pressure from outside, competition. But then how do I feed that movement in a controlled or harnessed way?
All right. Well, the inertia is also the concept of the flywheel. Like what's going to get it going is that there's a certain amount of energy has to go into it to get the vehicle moving, to get over the friction of the tire on the road kind of thing. I think the same thing has to apply in terms of what we're doing with the people, that not only for themselves but also for the people that they're going to get involved. So there's an energy of self, there's an energy of others, there's some kind of connection there, and we've got to get that in terms of what's possible.
Yeah. Well, in video 1 we're establishing the why, but then, okay, so now we've got our why, that gives us some impetus or some reason to move forward, but there's still going to be, like you say, this inertia. Where's the rest of the energy going to come from?
But we're going to do why with 1.
Yeah.
A little bit more of who.
Yeah, or
with
energy,
the second one.
Energy.
The second, the energy with that one.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, what's another key topic that we've got to get in here, do you think?
Well, as I alluded to, the where that energy is going to come from, it's going to come from either the internal environment or the external environment.
Yeah, so I got that piece up.
Yeah, and so if we're talking about the internal environment, what are the qualities of the internal environment that we'll talk about? Things like emotion. There's no movement going to happen in a conscious human system without emotion. Right. So the idea of T, a thought will not move into action without the emotion. So the emotion is in between the thought and the action. Nobody moves without some kind of emotion, a desire, anger, something that's going to drive them into action. There's a motivation there. And all these motivation, movement is all around the energy behind it. And so so in our video we're talking about the emotion, but then how is that directed? It can be explosive emotion, which goes nowhere. It's not energy to do work, it just explodes. So how do you, and that's what we'll get into in our workshop too, is if it has a container for focus, for purpose, for vision and outcome, then it's going to be much more useful, your movement, than just an explosion, a bright light and it's gone. And so I think some of the movements are just, could be just bright lights even, and go nowhere. A bright light within the individual that never gets energized by others. It's the idea is there and gone. And that might be okay sometimes. But.
Yeah. There are balance points too around resource allocation, called TEMS.
Okay, go ahead. What?
And that whole idea of time, effort, and money, and how you allocate the time, because time's the same for everyone, but it's the time you're going to put into what it is you do. But there's the effort, which is that sense of energy as well, what you're going to put it into. And then there's the money aspect, right, in terms of, well, do I bootstrap this movement by myself, or am I going to use something like a Kickstarter campaign because it's something that's even bigger? Am I going to go for funding somewhere else? Am I looking for an investor in this? So there's that whole TEMS piece, which I think plays off nicely, against the T piece. But I would add that, and I keep TEMS the S part of it, which is around the safety, not only from a physical point of view, but a mental point of view and a spiritual point of view, is that there's elements of that. So I think we need to talk about that.